this. De'Aaron Fox throws it off the front of the rim and ties the game. Are you kidding?
From half court. Oh, it counts! Harrison Barnes from midcourt.
My Sacramento Kings gonna get in.
They're not gonna get in.
They're gonna get that.
Hey, let me ask you a question.
You have New Orleans in there too, Sacramento and New Orleans.
Nope, just Sacramento.
Last night it was the NBA suspending its season after Rudy Gobert of the Utah Jazz tested positive for the coronavirus.
This hiatus will be at least 30 days.
Our job as protesters is important for our democracy. But if all we do is show up here to protest and don't follow through with voting, we're not going to see the change that we want to see.
The NBA Board of Governors has approved a 22-team restart in Orlando, Florida at Disney World.
Welcome into the Hangtime Podcast. I'm your host, Sekou Smith here in Atlanta. We are grinding our way back to the start of this NBA season. 22 teams in Orlando, July 30th it starts. And for the first time in seemingly forever, we're talking about the Sacramento Kings being a part of that group. Jason Jones of The Athletic, who's been covering the Kings forever, is finally here on the Hangtime Podcast. Jay, what's up? How you doing? And how different is this, thinking about the Kings and being a part of this elite group of teams, I guess you would call it, to get back to basketball?
I'm doing all right, man. And it's very different because as long as I've covered the team was never playing better as the season got later. It's always they were playing worse. There was some drama. There was always something going on, and it was never about becoming a better team. And even last season, when they won the most games they had since 2006, they still just stumbled to the end, blew, I think, 2 25-point leads, and really kind of went back to the Kings basketball they've been known for the last 10-plus years. So this is definitely, to me, a step in the right direction for them. They kind of figured some things out late January. It took them a while with a new coach, and some of their key guys are young and they were hurt. So once they kind of figured out what it is they were going to do, De'Aaron Fox started looking like the guy that they hoped he would become. Things started to turn around for them headed into February and March.
Now, I mean, we know the task is dawning, obviously, in Orlando for the Kings. You know, you're sitting at an 11th spot in the West. You got these seeding games. They would have to go on a tear, obviously, to put themselves in a position to stick around in Orlando longer. Are they capable in terms of just the makeup of this team and the components they have of getting hot and making a run?
I think so, because they got a couple of things that work in their favor with that. They got a guy like Fox who, say, over the last 6-8 weeks, I watched him go against the Clippers twice and destroy them. I mean, they couldn't put anybody in front of him. And, it probably didn't get a lot of attention just because, it's the Kings, but the way he was playing, you saw the all-star that he can be. And they put, in that Clipper game, the second one, I think he had over 30. They put Patrick, everyone in front of him. And you couldn't stay in front of him. And if you get a guy who can get hot like that, you can do things. And then you got a guy like Buddy Hield who, if he gets hot shooting, he can hit 10, 12 threes in a game easy.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you got a couple of guys like that. I think in this type of format, especially a guy like Fox who, one thing about him, he always says he doesn't get tired. He's got, young legs. I know everybody's been off for a while, but he's already fast. And if you get a couple of teams that maybe are a little bit tired, and if he's in the shape that he's normally in, I could see him causing a lot of problems if they can kind of get the game going up and down.
That 13 consecutive losing seasons, the longest playoff drought, is that weighing on some of these guys? I know last year they felt like they had an opportunity. This year could have been a breakthrough season. I mean, are they internalizing some of that now, realizing that, hey, it's something's got to break at some point?
I don't really think so, just because some of these guys haven't really, no one on this team has been around, even from the ownership on down. No one's been around for the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these guys, they're in year 3, year 4. And then the vets they do have, even before the season, were all, while the young guys are going, it's playoff or bust. The vets are kind of like, yeah, let's pump the brakes a little bit, because they understood what you were asking a group of guys who had never won ever in the NBA. You're asking them to go from 39 wins to 45, 50, which I know sounds easy, but they learned early on it's a lot different when you're not sneaking up on teams and surprising them and everyone knows what's coming. So I don't think it's really weighing on them yet. If anybody's weighing, it's weighing on Vlade, the GM. That's what's weighing on, because after he traded DeMarcus Cousins, he said, we'll be better in 3 years. And they were better record-wise after 3 years. But then the way the season started this year, people were upset with the coaching change. Why did you bring in Luke Walton? This isn't going to work. But I think you started to see things turn around. But I think if anybody's feeling the pressure, it's Vlade.
And we focus so much on the players getting back to it, we kind of lose sight of some of those things, those periphery things for these teams. With the Kings being off of the radar for a lot of NBA fans in terms of, playoff basketball, postseason basketball, what are we going to learn about this team in Orlando? People watching them for the first time maybe, or seeing them intently, for the first time during these 8 seeding games. What are we going to find out about this group that you understand and that Kings fans maybe know, but that the rest of us are a little oblivious to?
They've got some fearless guys. They got some young guys who aren't afraid. In terms of like in the moment, they're not afraid. Fox, even coming off the bench, Buddy Hield has no conscience when it comes to shooting. He really believes that he's open from anywhere. Bogdan Bogdanovic, probably hardcore basketball heads know about him. I don't know if the league as a whole has an idea just how versatile his game can be. And a guy who, really emerged for them this year was Rashawn Holmes. He was, one of the guys in Philly who was young guys part of the process, played in Phoenix last season. But he really elevated his game for them this season to the point where the free agent center they signed, Dwayne Dedmon, lost his starting job by game 5. And they didn't have Rashawn for a good about 25 games while they also were without Marvin. And he was really the guy who was anchoring their defense when they started playing well. And they lost Rashawn. They struggled for a while. So I think you're going to see a lot of guys that probably a lot of them feel disrespected. I mean, they watch TV. No one mentions them. They feel like, I guess everybody wants New Orleans in the playoffs, so we don't matter. I'm trying to think. Probably the only guy people have really heard of is Harrison Barnes.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you're going to see you got to see a lot of young, scrappy guys. Kent Bazemore's kind of found his way again after he struggled in Portland. They're getting production out of Alex Len. In a lot of ways, they're a bunch of underdogs, but I think by the end of it, people will see why they love De'Aaron Fox. People will see why, Buddy did win the 3-point contest, but in the game situation. And I think people are just going to realize, these guys are, they're tough. They're not the same pushover Kings they used to be.
It's such a different dynamic when you think about this format, the different challenges teams are going to have, in terms of keeping everybody in check, keeping things tight. Is this a group that's going to be able to police itself? And I don't mean that in the strict sense of the word, but I mean just a group that's going to hold each other accountable and be on their game on and off the floor in the bubble in Orlando.
Oh, I think so. I mean, in some way, this is part of the benefit of being young. I mean, even if they were at home, De'Aaron Fox would be playing video games. So I think in some ways that, some of these guys are so young. They were just in AAU ball, 4 or 5 years ago? So this is not going to be, obviously, that big of a challenge for them in that regard. And they're a pretty tight group. I mean, when things got really bad, they lost 15 of 18. I remember having some talks with Fox about that, and he'd be like, this ain't on the coach, this is on us. For the most part, they're a pretty accountable group. They hold each other accountable. Guys like Rashawn Holmes, those guys, they Corey Joseph. They got some guys who have playoff, in the case of Corey and Harrison, you got championship experience on the team. And they all, listen to each other. De'Aaron likes having Corey around there to talk to. So I think they're going to be good in that situation. I mean, and when you have to go from losing 15 of 18 and winning 13 of 20 right after that, I think that builds a connection, and you had to be connected to turn things around like that.
Every team is dealing with health and safety issues. Where are the Kings in terms of just the roster, the health, the COVID-19 testing? I know Buddy, Alex Len, Jabari Parker all were in the headlines for that. Where do they stand just in terms of the health and safety of the group as they get ready for Orlando?
Overall, outside of those 3 guys, everything's been good with them so far in terms of health. I mean, guys like who had been hurt, and the 3 guys that all tested positive, Buddy, Alex Len, and Jabari Parker, they all plan to be on Orlando. You saw guys like DeAndre and some other guys drop out after testing positive. Those guys are all going to go. And I think that does kind of play into the fact that this team has been bad so long. If they've got a chance to get in, none of those guys want to sit this out.
Right.
I mean, because if they don't make it this year, they go into next year, they can tie the Clippers, with 15 in a row, missing the playoffs. And they want no part of that record, even though none of them have been around all those years. They know if they go in the next season and miss the playoffs and miss it this year, they're going to have that. Hey, you guys are like those really bad Clipper teams, and they don't want that. So everyone feels good. Everyone I've talked to has all said that the way they put it is we want to start, finish what we started. And if you look at the numbers and everything, and when play stopped, of all those teams in the group for 8, they were playing the best. Just no one talked about them, but they were playing better. They were playing better than Memphis. They were playing better than New Orleans. They had just blown out Portland, and they really should have beaten San Antonio twice already this season. They blew a game in overtime. They hadn't been being in overtime. They were up, I think, 7 with a minute to go and just imploded. But the way they see it, all those teams in the grouping for 8, they can play with Embiid. So, I mean, they feel good. They really do feel good, and they really, they also feel disrespected, and no one talks about them.
7-3 after the All-Star break with the Kings. As you mentioned it, a team that was playing really well when things shut down. We're going to see how they fare when they get to Orlando, because it's a different vibe for everybody. That's the good thing, is that everybody is having to start on that same ground. So Jason Jones, the Athletic, joining us here on the Hang Time Podcast as we talk Sacramento Kings and the NBA restart in Orlando. Could be talking playoffs about the Kings, but when we come back, we'll talk keys to the Magic Kingdom for the Kings. Welcome back to the Hang Time Podcast, talking Sacramento Kings with Jason Jones of The Athletic. And since we're headed to the happiest place on earth, Jay, we got to get some keys to the Magic Kingdom for the Kings. I know that this is clear cross country for them, so they're going to be operating in a whole new world, as they say. If we're looking at the Kings, and their time in Orlando, and we're talking about just sheer energy, just, the youngest, one of the younger groups out there and one of the more fun groups out there. What do the Kings have to do to find their way as a group, just cosmically, not just the basketball, but just as a group in Orlando navigating the bubble?
I think one thing you're going to have to do is definitely peel De'Aaron away from the video game console. I mean, this is the guy, first off, because I'm obviously older than De'Aaron. He reminded me when he was a rookie that me and Vince Carter could have been his dad, which I didn't appreciate. And when he was playing, I think, a Super Mario game, and I told him I played that game in college, he was like, I think my dad might have played it too. So, yeah.
What regular season tendency does this group have to leave in Sacramento to make sure they get it done in Orlando?
Falling behind big in the first half. They had this real weird habit of coming in thinking, okay, we got this. And then all of a sudden you're down 15. And they were able to win some of those games, but in this situation, they can't walk in thinking they got anything in the bag. And it was always confusing to me. I'm like, you guys aren't good enough to think like that yet. But that's what got them 0-5 to start the season, thinking they were something they weren't yet. So if they come out and just play the way they know how to play from the start, they'll have a chance in every game.
Everybody's going to need a superhero. Somebody's going to have to be Mr. Incredible. Who has to do it all for them in Orlando? Is it De'Aaron Fox's job to do that?
Yeah, he's the obvious one. But I'm going to say Bogdanovic's got to be that guy because he sets so many different things up for them. What he does, one thing he does is that De'Aaron likes to play off the ball. I know he's the point guard. People don't realize he likes to have the option of just getting the ball and attacking and not worry about running things. And Bogdanovich in the starting lineup lets him do that. There was a game, he had 9 assists in the first quarter, just getting guys going. They need him to be just that fill in the blank. Do we need defense, rebounding? Just do that so the other guys can kind of just relax and play. Because I know he's only in his 3rd NBA season, but he played some high-level ball over in Europe, and really nothing seems to bother him in the game. So they're going to need him to be in that mode. I would throw Harrison Barnes in there with him, because those are the two guys they have that have actually been through who are, starters who have been through some extensive, postseason. For Bogey was overseas, for Harrison's with the Warriors, but they've been through something similar to this. So the other guys haven't. So I'd go Bogey then Harrison.
I was thinking Fox, but you're right. The obvious guys are going to perform. It's somebody else that's going to have to step up and fill that void. If we get the Kings into the postseason, what's the beauty matchup for the Kings in a playoff setting?
The Clippers.
Really?
They don't want to play the Lakers. The Lakers are too big for them. They've had lineups where Harrison Barnes, the 6'8", was playing the 5. They have no answer for LeBron and AD, but for whatever reason, they play with the Clippers. I don't know what it is, but like I said, they can't guard De'Aaron. They used Alex Len on Montrezl Harrell, and by the end of the game, Montrezl was trying to get in Alex's face. So, if they have to draw a team round one, to me, just in terms of the best chance to pull off an upset, and to me, in this Orlando setting, I think we're going to see some upsets.
Really?
It's so unique. I don't know what to expect from it. We haven't seen guys after being off 4 months, but I think in their dream scenario, if they could get the Clippers, I'm not to say that that they're going to beat them, but I just think in terms of the matchup, the Clippers will play small with them. That would be a matchup for them that would be one where that would give them the best chance at an upset.
What's the beast matchup for them? What's the one that they don't want to see?
Well, I'd probably say the Lakers. You look up and down, the West. That's the one team that they really couldn't figure out this year. They've beaten the Rockets. They've beaten the Mavs. They can play and beat Denver, but the Lakers, just because of their size. And for whatever reason, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope has never had a bad game against the Kings, it feels like. I've watched this guy go for 30 on the Kings. So, they just have some matchups. I think a lot has to do with their size. They can – they have no one as big as AD. They have no one as big as LeBron. No, they have no one as big as JaVale McGee. So those guys just give them a lot of problems around the rim, and they can throw big defenders at their guards. Because Buddy Hield's about 6'4", Bogey's he's listed as 6'6", but he's not 6'6". So, Bazemore's about 6'4". So, the Lakers are just so much bigger than them. I think when you get to, late game situations, it really just comes down to the fact that they just get pushed around physically because they're not big enough.
If we have somebody on this Kings roster who's most likely to win an NBA 2K tournament in Orlando?
Oh, it's Fox. He doesn't even like playing 2K, he says, but he will play just to beat someone to prove a point. And I think if anyone's that maniacal about the video games, I'm not going to bet against them. He goes on Twitter and just says, hey, I'll beat anybody at this game, and he does it. So if anyone's going to win, it's going to be him.
Who's most likely to sneak candy into a movie screening in Orlando?
I'm going to say Buddy Hield. Because that's just a very Buddy type thing to do. Maybe De'Aaron, but I'm going to lean toward Buddy.
We get a fairy tale run in Orlando for the Sacramento Kings, and they do the completely unthinkable. They go home to Sacramento with a Larry O'Brien trophy if what happens in Orlando?
If De'Aaron becomes Russell Westbrook, and just in terms of if he's getting 30, 14 assists, 8, 9, 10 rebounds, that means he's dominating it, and then he's defending the way he can. That means De'Aaron has, become a superstar. That means Harrison Barnes is getting you 18 to 20 a night. And so all those things would have happened in addition to the fact that, Buddy's coming off the bench and maybe giving you 20 plus a night. Yeah, they would need everything to click. But if all those things, if you told me De'Aaron was averaging 30 plus, Buddy was getting you 20 plus, Harrison was getting you 20, Rashawn Holmes was getting a double-double, Corey Joseph was playing great defense off the bench. All that happened, yeah, then that would definitely be completely amazing. And I don't know what bet I have to make with some people in Sacramento if that happened. I know Vlade told me, I told him I wasn't going to go down there with him. He said, no, we're going to get to the finals and make you have to come down there. So, if all that happens and I somehow end up in Orlando, yeah, all that has to happen.
Jason Jones from The Athletic joining us here on the Hang Time Podcast, talking Sacramento Kings for the NBA restart in Orlando, July 30th. We know they got the seeding games at least. Whatever comes beyond is extra, but we know we're going to see Sacramento playing what seems like, at least calendar-wise, postseason basketball for the first time in forever. So it's going to be really interesting. Thanks, Jay. Appreciate you, man.
No problem. Anytime.